Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hopes for School, where we talk about a student perspective and ideas for educational transformation. My name is Jennifer Casa-Todd, one of your co hosts. Unfortunately, Karen couldn't be here with us, but we have the awesome, the wonderful, and a very, very, very awesome human, Matt Miller. Welcome to our podcast today, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Excited to hey, anytime we get to chat, it's always a good time. So I appreciate you
I
having me on.
I know, my favorite moment. So I know this is going to be an awesome conversation. So I'm sure most people know you, but for those that don't, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Yeah. So my name's Matt Miller. I live here in West Central Indiana, here in the States. I'm about 3 hours south of Chicago and an hour and a half west of Indianapolis. I live in a little bitty community. I actually live on 25 acres in the middle of nowhere with one neighbor and a 1 mile radius. My kids and my wife are both at a pretty small school district. So that's kind of our background. And I got into teaching. I taught for 11 years, actually came to education from sort of a non-traditional route. I was a journalism major in college and was pretty sure I was going to be a newspaper reporter or a newspaper editor when I grew up. And then I did some internships. I got out of school. I started covering local government full time for a newspaper and realized that I hated it. And realized that the thing that I loved about journalism was coaching other writers on their writing. And I was like, hey, that's teaching. So I went right back to school, got into education, and started teaching high school Spanish full time. And so one of my books and kind of like my brand and my email newsletter is called Ditch That Textbook. And it was in that classroom after teaching for a few years, teaching right out of the textbook, I started to realize, oh my goodness, the students in my high school Spanish classes cannot speak Spanish. There's a disconnect. There's something wrong here. Babies can acquire a language without verb conjugation drills. Like there's got to be something else. And so I instead of teaching straight out of the textbook, I started ditching my textbook little by little, trying different things that might engage them differently or help them to connect with the language. And little by little, I just quit needing it as much. And so, fast forward to today, I've written 6 books. You can actually see them right here over my shoulder. I've written 6 books about teaching and technology. Won an award for teaching called the Golden Apple Award from one of our local TV stations. And today, I get the privilege of getting to work with schools and school districts all over the United States and beyond on how to integrate technology, how to do meaningful teaching, and then lots of stuff about AI recently. So that's me in a nutshell right there.
That is a big fat nutshell, friends. A
Yes.
big fat, so many great things. And I have to tell you how impactful textbook was for me in my practice, because that was one of the things I noticed too, right? That we're clinging on to this as if it's the curriculum,
Yeah.
and it's not. We could
Yeah.
do so much more. So that's wonderful.
Mhm.
And we had the privilege, Karen and I, of having you contribute a spotlight to our book.
Mhm.
And it's around one of your other books, one that you co-author with Alice Keeler. The You're gonna grab it. Beautiful. Ditch
Mhm.
that homework,
Mhm.
because that's one of the things that Karen really found to be a struggle in terms of her learning journey. And I
Yeah.
thought, who else to contribute a chapter to that particular, a spotlight to that particular chapter than you? Can you tell us a little bit about your contribution, what that looked like, what you said?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So, this kind of goes right along with what I was saying about my textbooks. I kind of did the same thing with my homework. Um, I started teaching Spanish, and in those first few years, you know how those first few years, whenever you're a brand new teacher, you sort of teach the way that you were taught. And so, for a long time, I just kind of did the same things that I remembered my teachers doing. And I knew that there were teachers in my building that were assigning homework, and I had been assigned homework as a high school student. And I thought, well, I'm probably supposed to do this. So I just started doing it just because it was the thing that often happened, that so many, teachers had done. And I started to have that same sort of realization that I'm doing this thing that everybody has always done, that everybody's always said is supposed to be helpful, and it's not giving me good results. I'm not getting really much of anything out of it at all. I would assign them a couple of activities out of the book, and then they would turn them in, and assuming that my students would turn them in, it was like bare minimum effort. And I'm looking at those papers and I'm going, A, did they learn anything? B, did they actually do the work themselves? C, what was this time taking away from? Like what was it keeping them from being able to do? And I had my own personal reservations about assigning lots of homework because, for goodness sake, we just spent from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. I mean, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're working hard, you're thinking about things, and you're growing as a person, and it's time to take a break. And there's research that points to the importance of taking a break. And I knew for my own kids, I didn't want them to go into school from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and study all of these subjects and then come home and study all that stuff too, because there's more to life than just the stuff that we study in school. I wanted them to be able to come home and play and to get outside and to do things with me and my wife and our family, and some of those like legacy heritage things that we wanted to be able to do. And we just didn't. I don't know, just like all of that stuff adding together, I just sort of like slowly, at first it was almost subconsciously, just started phasing homework out. I just quit assigning so much of it because it wasn't a core part of my students getting better. And then eventually I'm like, why in the world am I even doing this in the first place? Um, Research actually has not been able to conclusively point to homework as a best practice. If you look at it in Hattie's list of, all of the best practices and everything, it's down the list quite a bit. There's a lot of other things we could use to focus our attention on that are more meaningful than that. And of course, the way that homework is done too, there's just, it's just sort of all over the place. Anyway, I'm sort of rambling on this, but one of the things that I did say in the book is that there are some things that we can do that I think are good if we want to start phasing homework out a little bit. And the three things that I suggested in my segment of your book was, number one was using retrieval practice. Asking students to recall information out of their brains rather than looking it up in a book. That's something that cognitive science has told us is a simple practice that actually strengthens long-term memory. So there's that. There's the idea of feedback. I actually mentioned a quote in the book from Grant Wiggins that says research shows that less teaching plus more feedback is the key to achieving greater learning. So like more, lots and lots of feedback. And then the other thing was create meaningful repetitions was the other suggestion that I made, where, we're not just doing these rote, dumb, mindless questions on repetitious worksheets, but that we make repetitions meaningful. I think we focus on all of that stuff. We don't need the homework as much, and we're able to achieve more without it.
Absolutely. I love that. I love what you said about what is it taking away from in terms of
Yeah.
family.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly that resonated with me, but I also think both Karen and I are kids of immigrant parents. And so when I think of homework, for me, it's also equity. I never had a parent at home that could help
Yeah.
me. Karen didn't have English speaking parents at home that could help her. And in my experiences in the as a teacher librarian, I knew I had kids who were asleep on the desk when they came in because they were working two jobs to support their family. They didn't
Yep.
have time for homework at night. So that equity piece, really, in addition to all the research that
Mhm.
you cited, absolutely reasons to maybe stay away or definitely rethink. And lately, and I know you've been doing some work around AI, and I've been really interested in AI literacy. Um, Homework, AI, like I'm a substitute teacher right now, which has been exhausting and fun and also challenging. But I saw a student the other day and he had this Romeo and Juliet packet and it was handwritten, I think because it was trying to be AI proof.
Yeah.
And he had AI and he was just writing out the answers.
Yeah.
So, homework and AI, if you had to go back and sort of add to your book or
Mhm.
add to the segment in ours, what would you say? What are some of the ideas you have?
Yeah, I think homework is sort of like an end. It's sort of like the tail. It's like the end of it, and we see the results there. But if we get down to the root of why would students use AI to complete their homework, it's sort of the same question as why are they using it to write essays? Why are they using it to do certain things? And I think really AI is just uncovering all of these issues in education that we've been talking about and thinking about for so long. It's just a new technology and a new means to get at the same stuff. And I think one of the big things is the motivation factor, is like the relevance factor, right? Like I think really when it comes down to it, students ask themselves, is this worth my attention? Is this worth me spending my attention on? And really, if you want to boil the homework issue or the motivation issue down to something, I think that that's definitely it. And, a reason for using your attention can come from a variety of different ways. It could be because the topic interests you. It could be because the work interests you. It could be because you like the teacher and you want to please the teacher. It could be, for any number of things, because it connects to something that you're interested in your own personal life, or you see the importance of developing this skill because it's going to help you in the future. But basically, to rob from Simon Sinek, it's because of your why, right? It all ties back to your why, and why are we doing this in the first place? And so I think when it comes down to students replacing the thinking with AI, it's because they've determined that it's not worth their attention. They don't see the reason for it. And I think it's been so easy for us as educators to just say, oh, you got to do it because it's for points and it's going to go in the grade book. And eventually, at some point, students haven't always been motivated by the points in the grade book. There's that. Um, but then B, now we have this technology that can help them offload the thinking, that can help them to do the things that, that were we used to use those things to show that the thinking had actually happened. And so I think if we step back, and this is a big multifaceted, multi-layered conversation, but I think one piece of it for sure is that if we step back and we make sure that what we're doing is relevant or interesting or motivating to students, I think that's one way that we start to get around it, instead of trying to solve the AI situation. It's yet another technology in that big conversation. You've been having the same
Absolutely. Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, we've been having the same conversations. Absolutely. And I think what you said there, certainly Karen talks about this in the book quite a bit, but that connection piece,
Yeah.
do I feel like this is worth my time? That is what kids are asking themselves, because they've said to me, again, I'm having all these candid conversations with kids that I know, and they know I'm not grading them. So they're totally being totally honest with me. They're like, like, why would I do that? Like, what, how will this help me
Yeah.
in life? And there is an issue with that, but
Mhm.
maybe as teachers we could be more transparent about what we are doing and why. Maybe we leverage it. And you're right, this is a, a whole other podcast, isn't it? There are a couple of ideas, one in particular around homework, where I can't remember who it is, and I should have prepared that for tonight, but who suggested that you take the question, you ask them to use AI
Yeah.
in their homework, and then come back and compare those responses.
Mhm.
Have them even use different AI um, platforms in order
Mhm.
to, and then what was your prompt like, and what have we learned? Like, did this
Yeah.
do this effectively? Those really cool conversations will probably yield way more learning than what that packet was.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
just thinking about it differently, I think you're absolutely right. And we're going to ISTE. I don't know when this is going to be playing, but ISTE, the International Society for Technology and Education, I'm sure those are conversations that will
Yeah.
continue and need to happen in schools. So thank you for sharing some insights on that.
Yeah.
Um, you also get to go all around the world, and I've heard you speak, and you're fabulous, but you get to go to different schools and different areas in across the US. You've even come to Canada, which
Right.
I'm sorry I missed you.
Yeah.
So, can you think of an example? It doesn't have to be connected to homework, but an
Mhm.
example of school done right, something that you saw that you thought, this
Yeah.
is really cool, or this is something that everyone would benefit from.
Yeah. So I've been sort of mentally preparing for this question because I thought there's a good chance that you would ask me about this, and I know that if you ask me on different days, I'm probably going to give you different answers. But here's my answer for today, at least. I really think school done right in one circumstance is whenever everybody's working together toward a common goal. I think that's the thing that I think of right now. And actually, the first example that popped into my mind was the school where my kids go to school and where my wife teaches. We were talking about how I'm in this like little bitty school district, and what have we got here? We've got just sort of this combination of different stakeholders that see what the goal is, and we're not everybody's like perfectly pushing in the same direction, but the vision is shared enough, I think, that we go in that direction. So you've got teachers that are caring and that want to do right by students and that want to help them to become better thinkers. And the good thing is that we have administration that supports that, and we have parents who support that, and we have students who see the value in that. Not always, perfectly in the same way in harmony all the time, but I think everybody sort of gets that. Sometimes you don't have that, where the administration will see a vision of a certain thing and they'll push in one direction, and then the teachers aren't pushing in that direction, or that the teachers maybe have sort of an antiquated view of what education is supposed to look like. And it's that same conversation we were just talking about. The students, just like they said to you, they're like, why would I do that? Why am I going to spend my attention on that? Or even sometimes in the community, like we have a community where, there's certain types of jobs, or there's certain types of values, and then you have leadership or teachers or whomever in the school that don't align with that, and then there's friction, and you got to be able to deal with that friction before you can get past it, or it's always there and it's slowly impeding the progress. So it's like when everybody understands everybody else, I think that's huge. But of course, that's on a very big picture level. I think teachers can do that to some extent in a classroom by understanding their students, understanding the families, understanding their community, and trying to go in that route. I think school leaders can definitely do that if they understand, if they get kind of a pulse on everybody. And then if parents are willing to, at least in some ways, be involved in understanding in their education, it's like, when all of those things are working together and everything's in harmony, I think that's school done right. Of course, sometimes your hands are tied and there's not a whole lot you can do. But I think anything that we can do to get everybody on the same page, get everybody on board. And I even found that way with my homework, tying back to that with homework, where, in my high school Spanish classes, the parents and the students and even my school leadership understood what I was trying to accomplish. I was trying to help them to become fluent speakers of a new language instead of, high level grammarians. And high level grammarians would only get them so far. And so we did it in different ways. And because we were all sort of on the same page, I think that was huge. So,
Hmm.
anyway, I think that's like my big vision, at least for today.
Of school done right. It's so funny because you triggered a memory. It's a tangent, but I have a double major in English and Italian. I'm not sure if I ever shared this with
I don't
you.
think so.
And so most of my Italian schooling was learning grammar structures.
Yep.
And in fact, here, Italian was a supplemental I could have taken, and was mandatory for a little while at least.
Mhm.
And I had to drop French because the grammar was confusing to me,
Uh-huh.
right? So because and then when I had the opportunity to teach Italian, I thought, I don't want it to look like that. I want kids to be able to have conversations. I want them to go to Italy and be able to order a coffee or sit
Yes.
down with a new person and have a conversation with them. And I had a principal who was like completely on board with that idea.
Mhm.
And I was able to really move away from what they were supposed to do
Mhm.
in order to gain that fluency. And the kids really did appreciate that and love it.
Mhm.
So thank you
Mhm.
for reminding me of that moment in my career a long, long, long time ago.
Yeah.
Um, so that big picture, is that if I were to ask you what are your own hopes for school, would that be it? Or do you have what are your hopes for
Yeah,
school?
I don't know. All of these questions I feel like are getting me kind of like philosophical and sentimental and everything. So hopefully it's okay that I go that way. But yeah, I think probably the big overarching thing for me is just, I mean, just very simply do right by students. Don't have an agenda, don't have a preconceived notion of what you have to do or what kids have to do or anything, but just like be there, be in the moment, understand where they're trying to go and help them get there, and try
Yeah.
to help them to become, kind, empathetic, intelligent, um, smart, problem solving human beings. And we talked about AI earlier. I still believe, no matter where AI technology goes, I think if we can instill those values in kids through whatever it is, through a little part of a lesson or activity that we're doing in class, or an interaction with them in the hallway, or an after school program, or, whatever it is, I think if we can instill those values in them, and as soon as they get out the door and out into the real world, so to speak, no matter where AI technology goes, we're always going to need problem solvers. We're always going to need critical thinkers. We're always going to need empathy and relationships. And I mean, as long as humans are still here, we're going to have to interact with other humans. So, the empathy and the relationship building and everything, all of that stuff is still there. And I think if we focus, I know lots of teachers that talk about how their subject area is just a means to support kids. It's like, yeah, I have to teach English, but I'm really in the developing human being business. Yeah, I really have to teach Spanish, but the real reason that I'm here is to do right by kids. And I think sometimes if we're not careful, people sometimes weaponize that phrase, do right by kids, and they try to push their own agenda and try to figure out why it's good for students, when it's really just whatever they're trying to manipulate things to be. So I think we got to be careful with that a little bit. But in general, I think if we're trying to do that, I think we're in a good spot.
I love that. I know I've quoted Josh Shipp before. He says every kid is one caring adult away from being a success story.
Yeah.
And that's really what you're saying, right? That we are
Yeah.
in the business of kids over content, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that was a beautiful response. Not too philosophical. I
Okay.
think it was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
We like to end our time with what are you reading and or what are you watching? So anything good for us?
Well, I'm prepared for both of those, actually. I mean, first of all, if
Perfect.
you're not reading this book, then what are you doing with your life, right?
Ah, thank
No, this
you.
the what you and Karen have done here is so encouraging, and sort of like a light in the darkness and everything. And so I really, really appreciate what you all have done. Another book that I picked up recently that I really like is this one called Smart Teaching, Stronger Learning. It's a book edited by Dr. Pooja Agarwal, who is a cognitive scientist who's worked in K-12 classrooms, and is trying to help like translate what cognitive science says about learning into teacher speak so that we can understand it and put it into practice. And so she's got these 10 short chapters from different cognitive scientists that are I basically look at this as, what do you need to know about how the brain learns so that you can
Mm,
set your students up for success. So those are two things that I'm definitely keeping my eye on as far as reading goes right now.
thank you. I'm going to put that one on my list. Of course, I've read my own, but
No,
what are
yeah.
you watching? What are you watching?
Oh yeah. So actually, I didn't even think about this. I've got my shirt on. My Indiana Pacers are in the NBA Finals right now, so I'm getting ready to watch one of their games. Of course, by the time this comes out, the finals will be over and we will know their fate. So I still have some hope, at least in this moment. But other
Perfect.
than that, my wife and I like to binge watch old shows. Like right now, we're watching White Collar. I've always liked that. But then another one,
Never even
since
heard of that.
oh, seriously? It
Yeah.
was on the USA Network here,
Oh,
so yeah,
okay.
that might be what it is. But anyway, it's a really fun one. But then there's another one called Person of Interest. This is another old one, but since we were
Okay.
talking about AI, I started watching it again through new eyes with all the technology that's coming out. And it's
Mm,
basically a show where you have this like eccentric billionaire and this former, special ops Navy SEAL that get together, and they have this supercomputer at their disposal that the billionaire has developed. that uses artificial intelligence and all of the like video feeds from New York City. And it's like, I mean, it talks about, testing the boundaries of how much we should do. And so many of the conversations and the situations they get into around this machine they were just so prescient as far as like where we're going to go with artificial intelligence. So we rewatched that entire series, and it was, I mean, I was like watching it with brand new eyes thanks to Chat GPT and all the other stuff that's been coming out. And so if you want something interesting to kind of like walk you through some of those big AI issues, this series called Person of Interest is really good.
Neat. And it stands the test of time, because we
It
were talking
does.
about the $6 Million Man, and how if you watched it now, I don't know if you're too young for that, but it was a long time ago. Like, if you watched it today, would it stand the test
Right.
of time? Maybe not, but this one does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it does. I mean, there's a couple of little anachronisms. Well, I guess they aren't really anachronisms, but like things that don't like totally tie into today. But I mean, I think it was put out 10 or 15 years ago. So it's really, really pretty good.
neat. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, every time I talk to you, I so appreciate our conversation, learn something new about you, and I really appreciate the time that you took to
Yeah.
be here on the show with us. So thank you, sir.
Me too. I always love our conversations too.
Amazing. Hope to see you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who was watching today. See you next time.